Hello everyone, I'm Ethan.
I'm Alexa.
And this is our YouTube channel. This is the first video we're making. We both decided kind of to do a YouTube channel because we really enjoy reading books, and we thought we wanted to share that with you all and just try to create a series about it to where we can kind of look back on everything that we've read, keep track of everything. So we want to share with you guys some of our interests while we read, our background of reading, and then our top 10 or 11 lists of books that we've read this year. I'll put links of our Instagram into the description. That way you guys can click on it and follow us along on Instagram as well. And we'll update that throughout the year of books that we're currently reading, and then maybe do like a book club or something like that.
Yeah, and of course we have to throw out the disclaimer that neither one of us has any type of formal education in this area. Our opinions are our own. Sometimes when we enjoy a book, we can both agree it's not necessarily a literary masterpiece, but maybe it's something we couldn't put down regardless. My ability to suspend my disbelief is pretty amazing, and I can ignore even the worst quality to enjoy a good plot or characters. So like I said, all of our opinions are our own, and we're nobody special. These are just the books that we've enjoyed and the things we like to read.
We have full-time jobs. This is just for fun, strictly for fun. And the books that we enjoy are basically just our preference alone. Alrighty, so just a few things first. My reading background, obviously, I remember the first book series that I ever read was the Magic Tree House. Excuse me, when I was in first grade, I started that series, and I kind of fell in love with reading that way. When I got through high school and college, I didn't read much at all. When Alexa and I got together, she kind of re-sparked my love for reading, and I just kind of dove into it these past 3 years, and it's been really amazing. Some things that I look for in books are I love action books, I love thrillers. I'm very character driven, I feel like, to where like if I cannot feel connected to the character, I'm out of the book. I've read some very highly recommended books that people love, and I cannot connect with the character, and I don't finish the books sometimes. So those are some few things that I like. The way I read books, or I do physical copies, I do audiobooks, and then I do full immersion reads, which is something that I kind of discovered this year, is where I'll listen to it and then I'll follow along on it, like read the physical copy as well. And that's really, really fun for me. It's something that I really enjoy, especially some of the audiobooks that I'll talk about are really descriptive and there's sounds to them, so it kind of feels like you're watching a movie as you're following along in the book, which is really amazing. So those are some things that I like.
Yeah, so my reading background, the first series I ever read that got me into reading was Twilight. I read the Twilight series. I started them when I was 11 in the fall time when I was 11, and I got Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, the last two, for my 12th birthday. Got really into them. Was not a reader before that. Hated reading. Was not a reader before that. Got really into this series, and it kind of just cracked it wide open for me. So when I first started reading, I was really into fantasy and paranormal stuff. Of course, with the door opening with vampires, I had just dove into that and really enjoyed that. Werewolves, witches, ghosts, all the things. Some of the series I read when I was younger would include like the Percy Jackson series, the Hunger Games, the Mortal Instruments series, shout out to Cassandra Clare, things like that. Things that I enjoy when I'm reading. I'm similar to Ethan in that if I can't get invested in the characters, I really just can't care about the plot, which is like my main beef with series like Game of Thrones. Sorry, everybody. Sometimes when there's no one to really root for, it makes it hard for me to get invested or care about what happens to them. I enjoy good character development. It's also nice to have a good plot. Some of my favorite series have both going for them, and it makes it really interesting for me. Love elements of like magic, combat, love romance. This year, my list of books that I read is super romance heavy. Didn't read as much fantasy this year as I usually do. Adventure, epic quests, things like that. Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and start off our lists. We'll work our way down from 10 to our favorite books of the year. We'll kind of give you a reason why we like the book so much, why it maybe clicked with us. So my first book that I'm going to start with is Murtagh from Christopher Paolini. Love this author. I finished The Inheritance Cycle last year, and this book came out this year, and actually this is a signed copy. And I got so lucky to get this. I'm very happy. Of course, I cannot find the signature yet. It's somewhere here. Yeah, it's in the first page there. So this is a signed copy from Christopher Paolini. If you can focus in on that. This book is amazing, one, because it kind of continued that inheritance cycle for me, because once I finished that series, it was an absolutely amazing series, and I fell in love with it, and I was sad that it was over. So when he came out with this, I was extremely excited. It kind of just restarted the whole thing for me, where I think that there's going to be a couple more books after this. Unsure, but I really hope that the world of Aragon just blows up again, and he writes 100 more books about this. So I just love this book. It's got good character development, great action, good magic. I love all those things. I need all those things in books for me to like. So that's my 10A book of this year.
So you're second to last?
Yep.
So I'll start. I don't have exactly 10, just because 2 of mine were the ends of series, so let's jump at that. But my number, I guess 10, would be Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I actually found out this year, after reading a ton of Christina Lauren's stuff, that this is 2 people who co-write together. I've read a bunch of Christina Lauren books, and this one's been on my TBR for a long time. I've had the physical copy for probably 2 or 3 years and just never got around to reading it. Don't know how I let it sit on my shelf for so long. It was very good. It drew me in quickly. I was invested enough to be curious about the characters from the jump. There's a little bit of mystery kind of in the beginning, a mystery event that kind of happened that the author makes you wonder about without frustrating you from lack of detail. So the pacing was pretty good there. By the time I reached the twist in this book, I was emotionally invested enough that I was going through it by the time we got there. There's a lot of great commentary about love, both familial and romantic, so I really enjoyed this one.
Well, my next book is The Devil's Hand by Jack Carr. I'm a huge fan of this author. He's a big favorite of mine. I like to go fantasy book, and then I like to go something like this, where it's kind of more like a modern, realistic book. This one has a ton of action in it. I think this is book 4 or 5 in the series. And it's, like I said, it's got a lot of action. It's kind of, the way I view it is, it's kind of mind-numbing, to where I can just blaze through it in a couple of days,
like
and
not
really like think about it. You know, like, it's just kind of like the plots aren't like so overlapping. I don't have to read the 4 books before this to understand this book. For those of you who've watched the Terminal List series on Amazon, that's what this character is. It's all this same character that's in that series. So I definitely highly recommend all of Jack Carr's books, because they're very easy to read.
Very nice. My next one, which we'll put up, I don't have the physical copy of it. I read it as an ebook, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, I read both physical books and ebooks, and I like to listen to audiobooks too, so I'm not picky about the medium. But my next one was The Paradise Problem, also by Christina Lauren. This one also drew me in quickly and had me amused from the beginning. Christina Lauren is always making me laugh at some point in her book, sometimes from the jump, sometimes later on. Very funny. This one has like adventure in paradise kind of vibes. I think there's a fake dating element, which I'm a sucker for that. And a lot of really nice tension, and it's spicy. So if you're looking for something to read, maybe in the summertime, this one had summertime vibes, and I really enjoyed it. I read it, I think, in 1 or 2 sittings, ate it up.
How spicy is it? On the chili meter.
It's pretty spicy. From like, if we're doing like out of 5 chili peppers, probably like everyone's scale is different, right. So it's really hard to say. So if we're not talking like dark romance, then probably like 3-ish. Okay. 3-ish chili peppers, so it's not like Fade to Black, but it's also not like the darkest thing you've ever read in your life. It is spicy though.
Yeah. My next book is The Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I finished the Throne of Glass series this year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was an endeavor. It was a commitment, because there's a ton of books in it. But I think this one, honestly, unpopular opinion, might be my favorite. And the reasons why I love it is because it kind of it was just a different setting than all the other books. And everyone hates Kale. I liked Kale. He gets his redemption arc, and I'm a sucker for a slow burn, and that's what this entire book was. I did the tandem read with Empire Storms, but this one was absolutely my favorite. Like I said, the slow burn it really gets me, and I love that. And then once the climax happens, then I'm like, nah, I'm done with it. Okay, let's move on to the next slow burn.
Tell me this. Most people do the tandem read because Tower of Dawn is their least favorite. They're dreading it. They hate Kale. Blah blah blah. And most people do the tandem read to get through Tower of Dawn by using Empire of Storms to kind of motivate them to read it and to kind of have that, oh, here's what's happening at the same time thing going on. Would you say that you felt like, because this is what I gathered from what you told me about it, would you say that you felt like Tower of Dawn was getting you through Empire of Storms?
Absolutely, because I couldn't
That's a hot take.
I couldn't wait to put down Empire Storms to get back to this. I loved the land that it was in, the environment, like the desert. Loved all that. Loved the magic. Loved the animals, the beasts in it and stuff. I really enjoyed it. And then sprinkle the slow burn on there for me is just my cup of tea.
I love the characters.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that, but it is what it is. And like we said, this is our preferences, okay? So don't come burning down our doors for this.
So next, once again, this one was an ebook. It was the 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I love the premise of this one immediately. As soon as I read the description on the back of the book, I was like, this sounds so like magical and whimsical, and it really was. I found it to be just immediately consuming. I was immediately invested in the characters. I found them interesting. They were dynamic. They weren't super deep to where we knew absolutely everything about everything that ever happened to them, but I found them dynamic enough to be believable. Didn't have to work really hard to suspend my disbelief, which was cool. There was an awesome sense of anticipation and tension in this one. This one's a romance. And it's really cool because there is a magical realism element that I don't want to spoil for anyone who wants to read it, but I just find that like absolutely fascinating. So I was hooked on this one and I ate it up. It is a little spicy too. It's not as spicy as the Paradise Problem, but it's spicy.
And I know whenever you told me about it, the magical part of it was so interesting that it's on my TBR, and I'm going to try to read it this year because it does seem very good.
It was super cool.
All right, so my next book, and this is number 8 for me, is The Fury of the Gods. This is the last one in the Bloodsworn series, so I got to finish this series as well this year. The reason I really enjoyed this book is because it tied all the loose ends together at the end of the story. It was really good, very action-packed. This type of magical world or fantasy world that this takes place in isn't something that I normally lean towards. I don't really like Vikings and Norse mythology. I know that's really in right now, and it's not my favorite. It's not my cup of tea, but I did enjoy this. They did a really good job of just adding a really wild fantasy, magical theme to it, to where it kind of overlooked all the Norse mythology of it. It kind of just bores me a little bit. So I really enjoyed that, and this was the last one of the Bloodsworn series, and it's by John Gwynne, so I definitely recommend that series there. And because that series was so good, I'm going to read other John Gwynne series because he's a fantastic writer, and it's something I really enjoyed this year.
And that series is the first experience you've had reading any of his work, right?
Yeah, that was the first one.
Very nice. All right, so my next one is Lovelight. We cannot see. This one was really popular. It got adapted into a miniseries. I think it was a miniseries on Netflix. I actually watched 2 and really enjoyed. Really love the historical setting of this. It was super awesome. I learned things, even though this is fiction. I learned things about what happened in Paris during World War II that I didn't know before. I found this super interesting. I was invested in the characters. The main character is deaf, which I found interesting because even just the tiny details of going about like daily life as a deaf person who's pretty independent, I found that to be incredibly interesting. It's not something I've had experience with, so I found that really had my attention. Like I said, I love the setting. I was immediately gripped by the characters. The familial bonds in this were super powerful. That's not something I usually really look for when I'm reading something like this, but they really drew me in and made me, I was so invested in what was going to happen to these characters. And like I said, there were a lot of really awesome elements. This is one of those books that I'm not someone that has to have a book like my preconceived notions of how it's going to end when I start it. That doesn't have to happen in order for me to enjoy it. And sometimes when it ends in a way that I didn't see coming, it really keeps me thinking. Like I think back to like what happened in this book. So sometimes just randomly, just because it ended the way that it kind of needed to, and it was just heartbreaking and beautiful and really like an awesome story. So would definitely recommend this one.
That was also on my TBR too. I love World War II stuff, so that one's definitely going to be something that I read this year. My next book is my number 7 book of the year, and it's Thrawn, Star Wars by Timothy Zahn. This is the first Star Wars series that I read ever, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I can't believe I've never read any kind of Star Wars books before. So this year I watched all the Star Wars in chronological order, all the movies and series and TV series, and then I started reading the books, and this book was awesome. This is one that I did a full immersion read on, so I listened to it, the audiobook, and I followed along, and there's sounds in the audiobook, it's like you're watching the movie as you're reading the book, because there's blaster sounds and there's like all these like space sounds, and it just really just envelops you into this whole world that you're in as you're following along with the book. This isn't super action filled, but if those of you who know anything about Star Wars, Thrawn he's a psychopath first of all, but he's an incredible tactician, and they do a great job in the book. Timothy Zahn does a great job in the book of really putting that on display, but also keeping it very interesting, because like I said, there's not a lot of action in it, so you easily get bored with the book, but it does it in a way that it keeps you very invested, and you definitely fall in love with the evil character of Thrawn. So it is a great read. Definitely recommend doing the full immersion if you do that, or just the audiobook, because it is really awesome.
My next one was another ebook. It was The Women by Kristin Hannah. This was another historical fiction centered around nurses in the Vietnam War. I found this book, just like All the Light We Cannot See, I found it like gripping. I was immediately invested in the characters. There were things in there that were historically accurate, that were shocking. This felt like one of those books, just like All the Light We Cannot See, that while it was fiction, you felt like you could have been reading about a real person based on the historical accuracies in this book. There was a lot of things that happened to women and that women did during this time period that should probably be more widely considered about society in general. Kristin Hannah does a beautiful job portraying the events that happened in this book. I was invested from beginning to end, and it's one that, once again, he heard me talk about just because it was so interesting. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away on that one.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to read that one as well. That one, the way you described it to me, it sounded really good.
It was.
So my next book is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Love this book. Always had a fascination with dinosaurs as I was growing up. So the reason I love this book so much is because it's just absolutely just nostalgic for me. Loved all the Jurassic Park movies. The book, obviously, you've heard this before, the book is better than the movie. This book, absolutely better than the movie. And it was just such a fun read just to dive back in the world of Jurassic Park and have things in there that weren't in the movie, so it felt like it was new to me. Really loved that book.
My next one is actually going to be a trilogy, and it is the Knockemout trilogy by Lucy Score. I ate these up. Heard mixed reviews about them. Set in a small town, follows Brother 1, Brother 2, Brother 1 and 2's best friend in these books. These are romance. They were spicy. Just love I'm from a small town. Being from a small town is not romantic like people make it out to be. It is in this series. It has this nice kind of glow about it. You're invested in the characters. These are funny too. Yeah, really enjoyed these. Had these recommended to me by one of my good friends, and they did not disappoint. I had to buy the physical copies because I enjoyed them so much.
Is that the only 3?
Yeah, this is a trilogy.
That's it.
Yeah, Lucy Score has written a bunch of stuff, but really enjoyed these. They were awesome.
My next book is the Mistborn book, the first one. I'm going to be honest, I was a little disappointed in the series, but this book and this is an old cover of this book. I don't think anybody got this cover anymore. But this book, the first one, was absolutely amazing, and I ate it up. This is the first time I read anything Brandon Sanderson, so I got in Brandon Sanderson universe this year. The magic system in this alone, the allomancy, was just something that my brain just never even thought of until I read this book, and I was all about it. That's why I love the first one so much. The rest of them, the other two were good, but nothing will stand up to the way I felt when I was reading this book. I blazed through this book in like 2-3 days. It was just, I was so enveloped, like I said, in the magic system that I just couldn't put it down. So, unpopular opinion, the other two, didn't really care for. Yeah, I think it was the character thing. I just didn't really like the characters that much. But the magic system alone is what powered me through this book. So, that's why that was on number 5 on my list.
My next one is another ebook, Funny Story by Emily Henry. And the funniest part about me enjoying this book so much that it was a 5-star read for me and one of my favorite contemporary romances of all time is the fact that the first book I ever read by Emily Henry was Happy Place, and I hated it. It was a 1-star for me. I hated the characters. Wasn't a fan of the writing style. And then I read Funny Story, and it was like a totally different author. It's one of the best contemporary romance I've ever read. It was spicy. There was a lot of like anticipation and tension. The relationships and characters were just built beautifully. I actually tried to go back and read Beach Read by Emily Henry after Funny Story because I enjoyed it so much. And Beach Read was definitely written by the same person who wrote Happy Place because I DNF'd it. I did not like it. Didn't like the characters. Didn't like the setting. But Funny Story, it's going to be one of my favorite of all time. Like I said, 5 stars. I'm going to buy a physical copy of this here soon. I look at it every time I go to the bookstore. Really loved it. It's set in Michigan, and it has like this really awesome kind of Michigan vibe about it, which you'll have to read to kind of find out what I'm talking about. But it feels cozy, it feels real, it feels kind of raw. You're so invested in the characters that you really want everything to go well for them, and it doesn't always. So, and the premise is really funny in general too. So, I definitely would recommend Funny Story.
Funny Story. So the next 4 for me are going to be all 5-star reads. So these are my favorite books of the year. The next one is Red Rising. This book, I'm sure everyone's seen it on Book Talk and Bookstagram. It's very popular this year. It's gained a lot of steam. I'm sure you've all heard that it's kind of like The Hunger Games, and it is. And if you didn't like The Hunger Games, get out of here because this stuff is awesome. It's just as violent as The Hunger Games. It's got just great characters that you absolutely love. There's a bunch of books in this series. This is the best one. It's another series that I finished this year, but this one was my favorite one. I'm kind of a crazy reader. When I read the first book and I love it, and then I read the other two and I don't really care about it, it almost always happens to me in the series, which most people, it doesn't happen to that way. But this is one of my favorite books that I read this year. It was super easy, so it's not real thick to read. You can blow through it in a couple of days. Huge fan of it. Great action, great characters, great story, great plot, all the things. And it is kind of like The Hunger Games. So I love The Hunger Games too, so that's why I like it.
And my very favorite read of the year is definitely going to be Business Casual by B.K. Borison. And Business Casual is the 4th book in the Lovelight Farm series. I am obsessed with these books. You got Lovelight Farms, and then In the Weeds, which is the 2nd one, and then Mixed Signals, the 3rd one, and then Business Casual. It is really hard for me to say which one of these is my favorite. I would give all of them. I would give the 2nd one 4 stars, but the rest of them are all 5-star reads. I recently went through and tabbed out the first one because it's probably, this series is my favorite contemporary romance series of all time. Funny Story is kind of tied for 2nd, but the 4th one was so good, it did not disappoint. I love this author. This is her debut series, which I was shocked to learn because it's so quality. I love her writing style. I want to be friends with B.K. Borison. She seems amazing. She has 2 books coming out in 2025 that I'm already super excited about. I've already pre-ordered the first one, First Time Caller, because these books were so amazing. This is like the coziest, like warm sweater romance of all time. And it's spicy, too. These are super spicy. The tension is next level. You're rooting for all of the characters. They're all great. And it's not just the main characters that are great. There's a million side characters, and you like all of them. Could not recommend this series enough. But like I said, I was actually really sad when this came out because I was so excited to read it, but now the series is over, so I'm super pumped that B.K. Borison's going to put more stuff out next year because I just want these people to be my best friends and just give them all a hug at the same time.
And if I could tell you how many times I've heard her talk about Lovelight Farms, it's like I've almost read the book. I know so much about it. I think you woke me up when you finished the book to tell me about the book. I was asleep. She woke me up because it's that good. Ridiculous.
Amazing.
My next book, I don't have it here, but it's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It's a sci-fi fantasy book, and it is awesome. It's a great story. It's very, very detailed. So Andy Weir, he's the one that wrote The Martian, which is a movie now. If you've seen The Martian, you know how good of a movie that is. The book is obviously 10 times better. But Project Hail Mary is by the same author. It's just as detailed. There's so much stuff in there about space and time travel and all this stuff that is a million miles above my head. And we have a special guest here. This is Azula. This is our pride and joy, Miss Baby, if you will. She loves to sit and watch us read. So anyway, Project Hail Mary, definitely recommend that because, and we have another honored guest with us today. This is Arya.
Arya, she's named after Arya from Aragon from the Inheritance Cycle, not Arya from Game of Thrones. Just woke up from a nap.
Just got it from a nap. It's a tough life that this one lives. Go on. No, not to Mama. They also liked Project Hail Mary.
They did.
All right, my next book. You're done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my next book, so I don't have a copy of it either, but it is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. It was the first Stephen King book that I ever read. I'm kind of a baby. I don't like to read horror stuff, so I don't like scary books. That's not my thing. But Stephen King wrote this book about a time traveler, goes back in time and tries to stop the JFK assassination. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, I'm in. That's right up my alley. And it was. Stephen King's writing is so good, so detailed. He gives you so much detail, but not so much that it's distracting like that, or that you get bored. Like, it's hard to explain. You have to read one of his books.
I've read some Stephen King. I read the Bill Hodges trilogy last year, and that's a big thing with like Tolkien. Like people love Tolkien, but some people are like, oh, it's too thick, it's too slow. Mm-hmm. Whatever else. King has a way of doing that doesn't bore you. He gives you the nitty-gritty details, but you're invested. You want to know more. Yeah,
and like the Tolkien stuff, like I've read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and there's a lot of detail in that to where you do kind of get bored. Like you're like, come on, let's move on. It's a dark, wet cave, I get it. But Stephen King does an amazing job of describing things and still keeping you invested in it. This book, 11/22/63, is a thick book. But it is totally worth reading. It was so good, I just actually gifted it to my father for Christmas because I knew he would love it as well.
Yeah, and a little disclaimer on that one too. Stephen King's descriptions of violence are intense. So if you're sensitive to that, might be something worth considering before you delve into his writing.
That's a good point. And my numero uno book of the year, and probably the number one book of my life, is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. I absolutely could not put this book down. This book is tailored for me. I love samurai. I love sword fighting. I love the magic that it had. Everything about it. She wrote this book for me. That's what it felt. And I think I read this book in like a day and a half. It was just, I'm going to read it again. This is my prized possession. If the house is burning down, I would grab our dogs, obviously, and my girlfriend. But I would also grab this book too because I would not want this to get burned up in the fire because I love this book that much. I will have this book forever, and I will reread it and reread it and reread it. And I will not reread books because I ain't got the time for that. But this one it spoke to my heart. Great story, great action, great magic, everything about it. I loved it. So definitely, please, if you don't read any of these other books that we have out here, read this one and then Lovelight Farms so that you can share that lovely memory with your special someone.
And when he was reading Sword of Kaigen, he immediately was talking about how good it was. Invested from the jump. It's definitely going to be on my TBR as well, just because it comes so highly recommended.
And that is it for our first YouTube video. Thank you guys for joining. We're hopefully gonna come out with some more YouTube videos and some more content alone. We're gonna take you guys on our journey with us as we read our books. We might have some other videos with our dogs and some running stuff on here. But thank you for joining.
Yeah, and you guys see what we like to read. So if you have any suggestions based on the things we've shared here, definitely let us know.
Yeah.